Hey guys, it's Tatas Tuesday, and this Tatas Tuesday, we are talking about Star Wars. And I guess I could do ta 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 tas ta 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 tas Tuesday ta 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 tas ta 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 tas ta ta Tuesday. There we go. Do 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 do. Now we have the Star Wars Force Awakens Tatas Tuesday theme song. Because sing or sing not, there is no try. And you guys who've watched this channel for a while know I freaking love Star Wars. I like a lot of nerdy things, and it's often kind of difficult for me to choose my favorites because I like so much. But Star Wars is definitely up there. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite science fiction properties. And it's almost like I think I just like what they'd call space operas or planetary romances. I think I just like that genre because, strip it right through. I, really like Mass Effect. I really like Star Wars. I really like A Princess of Mars. Things like that. Those of you who don't know the books, that's John Carter. And I know John Carter was supposed to be a terrible movie, but I liked it. And I'm allowed to like it. So I just like these, I guess some people would call it soft science fiction or space fantasy sort of things. I just like the ones that create this amazing world to tell interesting stories about humanoids. I won't just say people because, the alien races and things like that. To me, the thing that really made me go, oh my God, Star Wars is the best thing ever, was Yoda and R2-D2. How is this related to Tatas Tuesday? I know, guys, I'm getting to that. I'm just Star Wars nerding. And Momo's here now. Yay, Momo. Let's show you why this is related to Tatas Tuesday. No more gold bikinis. J.J. Abrams' new Star Wars film is female friendly. And I know this article's a bit old. It's a few weeks old. But I haven't really had a chance to talk about Star Wars on Tatas Tuesday because there's been video game issues to talk about. And, this is primarily a video game channel with other stuff. Well, video game adjacent channel, as people are saying. Because I don't show enough gameplay. Well, if you guys watch more gameplay, I'd show more gameplay. I do the stuff people watch. But I digress. You'll notice this statement. Director says he hopes mothers will take their daughters to see The Force Awakens in the same way as fathers have traditionally seen previous installments with their sons. Now, let's not take The Guardian's word for it. Let's find an actual quote, because The Guardian can be a little, let's say, biased about these sorts of things. Speaking on U.S. show Good Morning America, J.J. Abrams, the movie's director, said, Star Wars was always a boys' thing and a movie that dads could take their sons to, he said. And although that is still very much the case, I was really hoping this could be a movie that mothers could take their daughters to as well. And that struck me as very strange when I read it. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, first of all, it's an artificial gender binary, isn't it? Like, why can't moms take their sons to see Star Wars? A lot of them do. And a lot of them always have. And why can't fathers take their daughters to see Star Wars? Because a lot of guys I know who have daughters, they want to share Star Wars with their daughters. And it's really funny because their daughters end up dressing up as Darth Vader for Halloween. And I think it's amazing that there's all these cute little girls running around as Darth Vader. That's fabulous. Girls just love Darth Vader for some reason. But it's an artificial schism between the sexes, isn't it? This idea that fathers take their sons and mothers take their daughters. I know when I go to see Star Wars childless, I see a lot of moms sitting there with not just their kids, unless they have, 6 or 7 kids. These, 2 sets of moms brought 6 kids to the movie. No dad in sight. It happens. Because if your kid wants to see a movie, you take them to see a movie. And I realized then, my mother took me to see Return of the Jedi. My mother likes Star Wars too. But my mother took me to see Return of the Jedi. My mother took me to see E.T. I realized that these moments where I saw these, iconic sci-fi stories in theaters, they were all with my mother. And yes, Momo, you're putting into the mic. And so this idea that, in the 1970s and the 1980s, heavily influenced by second wave feminism, moms didn't take their little girls to see Star Wars. Well, I'm living proof that that's not entirely true. And I mean, they weren't, this isn't expected to be literal truth, but I still think it's misguided thinking, and I'm a little bit concerned. Now, I mean, if Disney is examining episodes 1, 2, and 3, yes, I believe that episodes 1, 2, and 3 were a big step back in terms of female involvement in Star Wars films. The fact that the cartoons have had to add interesting female characters like, Ashoka Tano and things like that, give her more primacy. It was an oversight. Padme is not the character Leia was. Padme is pretty much a victim from start to finish, and no amount of running around will change that. We all know how it ends. And so it is odd that they decided to have her be the entire standard bearer for, female representation in those Star Wars movies. And there could be a few other characters that I'm forgetting, but I was not the biggest fan of, I guess, Anakin's mother, but not, I even forget her name. But yeah, she was there in episode 1, but I'm talking like main characters who go through everything. But I know a ton of little girls that loved those prequel films. And, if you look at the original Star Wars trilogy, the 4, 5, and 6, the structure of it is something that we call planetary romance or space opera. And the interesting thing is that the love triangle central to the original Star Wars trilogy, with Leia sort of, having feelings for Han, clearly, but then there's Luke as well. And other than the brother and sister part, how is that conflict, that choice she has to make, any different than the choice Bella Swan has to make in Twilight between Edward and Jacob? I mean, there's plenty of stuff in the original Star Wars that appeals to girls. I mean, traditionally, we don't see boys as giving a hairy crap about a love triangle, right? And I mean, it's not just Princess Leia that was female friendly in the original Star Wars. And I mean, as a kid, like I said, I really wasn't big into the boy-girl stuff. I was all about aliens and robots. And, like, obviously nobody pushed me to feel that way. That was something that was very much me. People tried to dissuade me from that because, I mean, when I think about the toys I had as a kid, because a lot of the toys we had were gifts, we had to save up a really long time to get any sort of toy because I didn't have a lot of money. And I remember I bought that little plastic Yoda with the orange plastic snake, and I was so excited. And then I bought an R2-D2, and I was so excited. And somehow at some point R2 got a marble stuck in his base. I saved up my own money and bought those toys, and a lot of the toys I had were gem dolls, because that was the compromise between what I liked and what other people would buy me. Because I hated Barbie, and it wasn't logic. The boxes were pink and everything was pink, and I hated that the shoes fell off, and I hated that the knees and elbows didn't bend. Like, even as a kid, I was a very hipster nerd. Points of articulation mattered. And I mean, yeah, okay, He-Man didn't have great points of articulation either, but I like the battle armor things. Like, ooh, it does something. And I don't think I had I don't think I even had any He-Man toys because nobody would buy them for me. I had a Starburst Swiftwind, which was a She-Ra toy, which, again, another compromise. I thought Starburst Swiftwind was kind of badass because it was a see-through horse. And it's like, oh, that'd be cool in real life because you could, like, see their guts and everything like that. That was my thinking. Like, a horse made out of fire was all right, but a regular pink horse, not interested in the slightest. And so I had a lot of gem dolls because I thought they looked kind of badass with all the makeup on their face and the cool colored hair. And, back then, having blue hair meant you were punk rock, not some, hipster protester. But it was also the fact that the gem dolls came with these doll stands, because the whole idea is you were supposed to set them up and be able to set them up as a band to play their instruments. Well, for me, the doll stands became hovercraft, and the guitars and like hand keyboards and things like that became blaster weapons, and they had space battles. That's what I did with Gem and Holograms. And wouldn't that be a cool show? Just a bunch of, glam rock intergalactic warrior chicks. That'd be awesome. And the gem dolls, because they were so much taller than the other toys, they were like this race of Amazons, and they tended to be the bad guys. Had their army of evil minions, which were these things called oodles, which were these little plastic naked baby things. They were really creepy in retrospect. But the oodles were their evil minions, and so they were like the putty people before Power Rangers. Like, it was the same idea. And so the oodles would come in and try to attack the little Star Wars figures, and then Yoda would use the Force to fight off the oodles and all that stuff. That's the way I played as a kid. So this idea to me that daughters have to be dragged to see Star Wars, like this idea that you need something more than the original trilogy offered to get girls interested in it, I think is unfair. One of the things I know that I initially connected to as a kid, I didn't understand why so many people thought Han Solo was better than Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker, to me, was a type of male character I'd never seen in a movie before. He was sort of overwhelmed and gentle and had to avoid, aggressive solutions to problems because it would turn him bad. And, he had the sort of big eyes and that floofy hair. And he was sort of like the cross between like a 70s man and an anime character. And he was a warrior scholar. Like, the philosophy of the Force was as important to him, as essential to him as the ability to wield a lightsaber. And at the end, he doesn't win through battle. He basically convinces, Darth Vader to turn back from the dark side for a moment. He talks his way out of a problem. And that I thought was like, wow, I would like to see more male characters in movies like this. This is more the kind of guy I'm interested in. I would like to see society reward guys like this who think their way out of problems, and who, it was that whole thing of, there's a bit of sort of Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings where other people had to carry Luke through as he sort of came into his power. And I like the idea of somebody who was sort of a leader that needed help along the way. I mean, there's that classic example of Han Solo shoving him in a tauntaun, and, he loses a hand and all that stuff. I mean, it's not an easy journey for Luke Skywalker, and it was a story of sort of failing and getting back up again, and failing and getting back up again. And I really, really liked that portrayal of a male character in movies, and I still do. I still look at that character and think that, Mark Hamill was an atypical leading man even back then. Now he's more known for playing villains because he's still an atypical leading man, right? And Han Solo was just so done, like, seen that before. And yes, he kind of turns good in the end, but that whole with a little love he'll change kind of thing, it's nice for a story, but it rarely works in real life. Assholes tend to stay assholes unless they themselves choose to get better. They don't do it for a girl. And of course, I know, like, not all guys, but it seems like the guys that sort of identified with Luke Skywalker just shifted right to the dark side of the Force, and I'm not sure why. I'd love to hear why the whole idea of the Dark Jedi, the villains, are so compelling in Star Wars. Because I'm like, why would you want to be angry all the time? Like, why would you want to exist in a paradigm of hate and anger? Like, I don't want that. I want to be a light Jedi. I don't want to be a dark Jedi. I don't want to fall to the dark side of the Force. That's bad. You know, you see what happens. You lose everything. Everything crumbles around you. Maybe that's for personal protection, not letting the rest of the world know they're sensitive dudes, because the world's still pretty not good to guys who are openly sensitive. And I think that, yes, we should absolutely have more types of characters in Star Wars. Although, when you really think about it, the cast of actual human characters in Star Wars was quite small, the main cast. I mean, you had a bazillion freaking stormtroopers and bit parts that came in and out. But the core cast was Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, Han, the Emperor, who was kind of human, right? I mean, Darth Vader, yes, he was a person inside the suit, but you didn't see it until the very end. And so, I mean, the opportunities for diversity were a little limited. I mean, somebody said, well, Obi-Wan could have been a person of color, but the whole idea of Obi-Wan Kenobi was to put more of a name actor in that role to buttress the fact that the three main characters were relative unknowns. And I feel that both legacies of Star Wars and Star Trek are suffering from fans feeling like they have to apologize for what came before because it's not letter perfect by modern diversity standards. And I think that's wrong. I think that you can recognize that you can add to the stories without saying the original stories had anything exactly wrong with them. I mean, and so now, I mean, there's room to say, well, what do we do new as Star Wars? Well, telling the story from a woman's perspective in the Star Wars universe is inherently new and it's organic. So it's not going to feel forced because it's like, hey, we've told stories about guys. Now we can tell a story about a woman. Why? Not because we're trying to be politically correct, because it's different. It's a new story. You know, and I'm a little disappointed that they scrapped the sort of extended universe stuff that, you know, Mara Jade didn't happen. But because she, I mean, to me, it's like, oh, wow, color in Star Wars. Whoa. And, you know, redhead. Yeah. Identity. And so I get why they want a more diverse cast because they want more people to say that could be me. I get that. And that's not political correctness. That's just good marketing. Right? You want people to identify with your product. I completely get that. But this whole idea that you're striking some blow for women's rights or that you're trying to make something more accessible. One of the reasons that Star Wars has been so enduring and it has become the dominant franchise in science fiction is because of its mass appeal. If you look at games inspired by Star Wars, like Halo and Mass Effect, Leia fills the functional role of Sergeant Johnson, I think his name is, the guy who's always yelling, who got killed in Halo 3. Did he get killed? I don't remember. No, he was standing there at the end with the Arbiter in Halo 3. Anderson in Mass Effect got killed. But he fulfills similar role. She is the the experienced military leader role in Star Wars. And that's crazy, right? When you think about that, like, holy crap, that's so cool that in 1977 you had a woman as a military leader and not even like just regular accepted military. It was rebel. They were guerrilla forces. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. How could anybody not say that there isn't something in it for women there? There isn't something that girls are going to want to see. You have the love story. You have a woman as a leader. And I don't get how the people controlling this brand think that's not, especially for the times, something that would resonate with women. And part of the reason that a lot more guys are into Star Wars than women was the general cultural stigma around science fiction at the time. Science fiction in general was seen as being for boys, not for girls. Girls were not encouraged to consume science fiction like boys were. And boys still got, it's junk. But, I saw it firsthand. The gifts that people would give me were not Star Wars toys. They were quote unquote girls' toys. And toys were a lot less gendered in the late 1970s and early 1980s than they are now. So I guess from a marketing perspective, the Star Wars people are going, oh, wow, because we have the pink section in toy stores, we have to have something that's for girls as opposed to something that's for kids. And this was a major frustration to me the other day. I went shopping for my friend's kids, and we wanted to find a Lego set. And the first Lego sign we saw was all the pink branded girl Lego. They had the rest of the Lego in a completely different section. We actually had trouble finding it. And so they basically had all the general Lego near the front of the store, not in the, they sort of, when you go into Toys R Us, they have sort of the baby section, and then they sort of have the boys' toys section that has dinosaurs that are also robots and wrestling and all that stuff. And then you got the girls section, which is all the Barbies and the Bratz and the Littlest Pet Shop and all that stuff. And then they have a specific Lego section. Lego is its own section in this Toys R Us I went into. But the Lego for girls was not part of the Lego section. That was in the girls section. But there was no Lego for boys in the boys section. And this is what we talk about when we talk about othering. That there's toys for all kids, and then there's toys for girls. And so the natural state of kid in terms of consumer products is boy. And this is the problem we get into with science fiction. That's an assumption. That is not true. That was not true in video games until video games started being marketed as toys. Nintendo had to choose because toy stores are segregated that way. And they had to pick boy or girl. They chose boy. But they wouldn't have been forced to make that choice were not for the way that toy stores are constructed, how they're organized. And that's not Nintendo's fault. That's not gaming's fault. That's not Star Wars' fault. So I don't think it's that Star Wars is suddenly for girls more than it ever was. I think that the people controlling the way merchandise is marketed and distributed have suddenly determined that the purchasing power of little girls is just as lucrative as selling stuff to boys in mass market franchises. And that's because of the success of things like, the Hunger Games and the Marvel movies that a lot of women see. And they're finally going, oh, women will consume this stuff. I just think that women are given a social okay, a social pass to like this stuff without being seen as weird now. And that's not the nerds doing it. That's the rest of the world. That's the normies making that distinction. And I think that's an important thing to recognize when we talk about whether these science fiction properties are hostile towards women. I maintain just on my own experiences, seeing Return of the Jedi in the theaters with my mom and sister, that it was always of appeal to women. We're just suddenly giving women the okay to like Star Wars. And I think that's unfair to the brand. So that's sort of my defense of classic Star Wars, and defense of the fans of Star Wars, and defense of, all these nerd guys who are now treated as easy punching bags and easy scapegoats for the gender segregation that the world large has created. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's going to solve the problem, because if you're not targeting the actual problem, you're not going to solve the problem. And treating guys who were willing to embrace a female rebel military leader as someone of worth and someone they found attractive back in the late 70s and 1980s, these guys aren't the problem, right? These guys aren't the problem. These guys are part of the solution. And if we make part of the solution out to be part of the problem, we get further away from the solution. So should I sing the Star Wars Tata song again? Should I? Ta 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 Tuesday, ta 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 Tuesday, ta 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 ta. Ta 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 Tuesday, ta 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 Tuesday, ta 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 ta.